Wait. So he's the leader now. But he's always been the leader. But not officially? You know what? I did not know that. Huh. May 9th, 1941. It's not that big of a machine, but it gives he who holds it great powers of secret communication. But what if someone else holds it? Then perhaps they could one day read that secret communication without anyone knowing. And at war, that's a huge plus. Perhaps. But getting it first is half the battle. But that happens this week. Enigma changes hands. I'm Indy Neidell. This is World War II. Last week, Athens capitulated and the Battle of Greece was over. The Germans had won. However, their attack on Tobruk in North Africa failed. In East Africa, Commonwealth troop attacks began on the last major Italian stronghold, Amba Alagi, and in Iraq, the Anglo-Iraqi War began. I'm going to begin this week with a few news items from the high seas. On the 9th, German U-boat U-110 attacks Allied shipping convoy OB-318 east of Cape Farewell, Greenland, sinking 2 ships. But the British corvette Albrietta spots the U-boat and then together with a destroyer uses depth charges to force it to surface. The sub is seriously damaged and its captain, Fritz Julius Lemp, says to the crew, "Last stop, everybody out," since he thinks they're sinking. The British stop firing on it when they see the men abandoning ship. Lemp then realizes that it is not sinking and tries to swim back to destroy sensitive materials, but he does not make it. When the sub is boarded, everything portable is removed, including an intact, working Enigma machine and the Kurzsignale book. Enigma is the German secret messaging code, believed by them to be unbreakable, and capturing such a machine is a major, major prize. It and the codebook are taken to Bletchley Park and will be used, already next month, to solve Reserve-Handverfahren, the German Navy's manual coding system when there is no Enigma machine available. The British are very busy at sea just now, actually. From the 5th to the 12th, Operation Tiger is in action. This is the first time in months the British try to send a convoy from Gibraltar to Alexandria. Winston Churchill, British Prime Minister, orders this because he wants tanks and supplies deployed in North Africa against the advancing Axis as soon as possible. This mission is combined with a supply run for Malta by 6 destroyers. 5 transports leave Gibraltar the 5th, with the battlecruiser Renown, the carrier Ark Royal, and a couple light cruisers from Force H. The destroyer gang and another light cruiser joins them the 7th. Also on the 6th, 2 convoys leave Alexandria for Malta with 2 cruisers and 3 destroyers as escorts. Admiral Andrew Cunningham sends out the whole Mediterranean fleet as support, a carrier, 3 battleships, 3 cruisers, and 19 destroyers. As part of the operation, they shell the harbor at Benghazi. Twice, actually. The whole big operation will end next week on the 12th, and though both convoys come under attack from Italian and German planes, 238 tanks and 43 Hurricane planes reach Egypt. It is true that the Axis under Erwin Rommel had been advancing in North Africa, but they are no longer, halted at the Egyptian border and at Tobruk, which they have under siege. Tobruk is strategically important because its harbor is the only one of any size between Benghazi and Alexandria. Before the war, the Italians built up the defenses with concrete and steel. Now there's a double semicircle of strong points around the harbor with barbed wire, tank traps, minefields, and artillery, and the defenders are led by General Leslie Morshead. His orders are, there is to be no surrender and no retreat. He has the 3rd Armored Brigade, which is going to be re-equipped by Operation Tiger, and the 9th Australian Division with the 18th Infantry Brigade as reserve, some 24,000 troops, as I said a few weeks ago. Rommel had attacked and been repulsed 4 times last month, and by May the 4th, for both sides, life at Tobruk settles down into a style not unlike the trench warfare of World War I. The ground is very hard, however, and this makes digging particularly difficult, so the trenches are often shallow at first. This means that their occupants must stay virtually motionless throughout the burning heat of the day. Neither side is well placed with regard to supplies or other personal comforts. Both sides adopt a policy of offensive night patrolling, which means there can be no relaxation. The Germans may not be attacking there just now, but there is one place they are planning on attacking pretty soon. I mentioned last week some of the plans for Germany's upcoming airborne invasion of Crete, planned by Karl Student and the 7th Flieger. That division, 3 parachute regiments and 1 air landing regiment, is to storm the island, arriving in 600 Junker 52s, some of which would be towing the 80 gliders that carry the light tanks of the 5th Panzer Division and troops of the 1st Assault Regiment, the spearhead of 7th Flieger. 280 bombers, 150 Stukas, and 200 fighters will provide air support and cover. 22,000 men are to be sent in under overall command of Alexander Löhr's 4th Luftwaffe. Student's plan is to send his 3 parachute regiments against the 3 towns on the island's north coast where the airstrips are. When they capture these, heavy equipment can be landed, and then they will be bases for tackling the enemy along the single road that runs 270 kilometers across the island. Maleme, the westernmost of those towns, is going to be the big focus, where the 1st Assault Regiment guys will land their gliders right on the airfield. Student expects to be outnumbered on the ground, but figures that with surprise and air superiority, a few days of hard fighting will win the island. The leader of his opposition is Major General Bernhard Freyberg, a war hero from World War I. But Freyberg's troops are a motley crew. There is a brigade of regular British infantry that garrisons the island, and 2 intact New Zealand brigades, and 1 Australian that had evacuated from the Battle of Greece. But the rest of his 40,000 men are a mixed bag, unorganized remnants, and without the equipment they need. They have a handful of tanks and a little bit of artillery, but barely any heavy equipment. In terms of aircraft, at the moment they have 17 Hurricanes and some obsolete biplane Gladiators. The 5th Cretan Division fought in Albania, but had been dissolved after the defeat, so there were only the reserves left on Crete. They are not many. British forces have been on Crete since Italy attacked Greece last fall, and their presence is what allowed the 5th Cretan Division to go to the mainland in the first place. But they have not built the island defenses up into the fortress that Churchill wants. He wants Suda Bay to be another Scapa Flow. But it has been pretty low on Archie Wavell's priority list for the theater. Wavell is the overall military commander. Freyberg didn't even arrive on the scene until April 29th, and wasn't exactly thrilled to find himself in charge of its defense. He was even less thrilled with the lack of air cover on the island. There is a bit of confusion though. Freyberg could not imagine Crete being taken in an airborne attack, so he put increasing emphasis on a seaborne threat. Wavell, however, was perfectly clear in his own mind that the Axis simply did not have the naval strength to come by sea. More on the plans and on British intelligence decrypts, which do give valuable and accurate information both this week and next week. The Germans are plenty active in the skies already this week. Every night for the first 2 weeks of May, British cities and dock facilities are just pounded from the skies. On the Liverpool docks, 13 merchant ships are sunk by the Luftwaffe in 7 nights of raids. However, on May 8th, the British succeed in bending the radio signal that guides bombers to their targets, so 235 high-explosive bombs that were supposed to hit an airplane engine factory are dropped in empty fields 35 kilometers away. And on the 7th, 23 German planes are shot down by the British during a raid on Humberside. The British are fighting elsewhere this week in the field in the Anglo-Iraqi War. On the 3rd, they attack Iraqi positions around Habaniya airfield. The next day, they launch aerial operations. A small German force using an airfield at Mosul is targeted. The Germans are being supplied from Vichy French Syria. By the 6th, much of the Iraqi Air Force has been destroyed, and Iraqi ground forces withdraw from the airfield. The Iraqis are driven back towards Fallujah, and on the 7th, 2 Iraqi columns caught in the open between Habaniya and Fallujah are attacked by 40 or so British planes, taking heavy casualties. That attack began last week, but there is new action beginning this week far to the east in China. The Battle of South Shaanxi begins in the mountains at the southern tip of that province. It is also known as the Battle of Jinan. Now, this is a rough region with almost no roads, and the Chinese nationalists have a stronghold here. Dick Wilson says this is the 14th attempt by the Japanese to dislodge them. But whatever they've used before, this time they're sending in over 100,000 troops against over 150,000 Chinese, and they're sending them in from literally all 4 points of the compass starting May 7th. They have bomber support, and the attack from the north crosses the mountains and the Yellow River the 8th. This is the most important river crossing in the region. The Chinese forces are now split in half. That is a direct attack. Others have been trying a bit of subterfuge. In East Africa, the Indians feinted last week to trick the Italians into thinking that their main attack against Amba Alagi was coming from the left and the center in a frontal attack and through the Fallujah Pass. The Italians bought it and manned those defenses. So on the 4th, the 29th Indian Brigade goes into action and takes Mounts Pyramid, Finn, Whaleback, and Elephant. After them, the cliffs crowd in on the way to Middle Hill, which the attackers take the next morning before dawn under a hail of hand grenades. Now, though, they are linked with Little Alagi, west of the Amba, bristling with enemy barbed wire and machine guns, and they come to a stop. At the end of the week, however, as the Italians had been drawn off the Fallujah positions, the feint becomes a real threat, and the Indians take the pass. And here are some notes to end the week. On the 5th, 5 years from the day he was forced to leave, Emperor Haile Selassie enters Addis Ababa. On the 9th, a Japanese brokered treaty in Tokyo officially ends the Franco-Thai War. And on the 7th, making his way south from Zagreb, now the capital of the Croatian puppet state, a 49-year-old communist who fought in the Spanish Civil War will set up shop in Belgrade for what is the beginning of a communist revolt against the Axis occupiers of Yugoslavia. Joseph Stalin knows him as Walter, but his name is Josip Broz, and his alias is Tito. Speaking of Stalin, up until now, he's been content to hold the position of General Secretary of the Communist Party. But on the 6th, he becomes President of the Council of People's Commissars. That's Premier of the Soviet Union by the Presidium of the Supreme Soviet. He takes over the post from Vyacheslav Molotov, who's also the foreign minister. See, Stalin has been the de facto head of the USSR for many years, but so concerned is he about a German invasion that he will deal with that and everything surrounding it from now on as the official and rightful leader. That ends the week, with fighting in East Africa, Iraq, and China on the ground, fighting in Britain in the skies, and lots of action at sea. And the capture of an Enigma machine. We've talked about Enigma before, a bit about its history, and a bit about cracking its codes. This has happened, especially by the Poles pre-war, but the Germans have made a series of modifications and improvements, making it far more complex. Having the machine is a great boon for the British if they can crack the codes. So the capture of this machine this week could be an event that helps win the war, or it could be the capture of just a useless but interesting lump of rotors, keys, and wires. Well, I guess we'll just have to wait and see which one it is. Joseph Stalin grabbing more and more power is not something new in the Soviet Union. Watch our Between Two Wars video on Stalin's Great Purges right here if you want to learn more about that. Our Time Ghost Army member of the week is Theodore Neuhauser. Theodore Neuhauser, okay. Okay, this is World War II. Hal Neuhauser was a star pitcher for the Detroit Tigers during World War II who went 29-9, 25-9, 26-9 in 1944, 45, and 46. I know a lot about baseball history. I'd like to know if Theodore Neuhauser is related to Hal Neuhauser. That's what I'm asking. Leave this in, because that's what I'm asking. Theodore, get hold of us, and if you're related to Hal Neuhauser, cool. Okay, but be like Theodore in other ways and support us at patreon.com or timegoes.tv. It is your support that makes this channel, well, makes all of our stuff possible. Don't forget to subscribe, ring that bell. See you next time.